She can continue to clap back and call any and all criticism of her just a smear campaign, or she can do what I really think she should, which is apologize, atone, and just try to move on and repair her life. And I'm not even talking about repairing her reputation, because in my opinion, repairing her reputation should be the absolute least of her worries. Trying to be successful in business right now and in all her business ventures and dealings should be the last thing on this woman's mind. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new around here, I want to welcome you. My name is Jennifer. I've been an esthetician and a makeup artist for over 20 years. I have a lot of beauty content, but I also talk about other things like life and social and cultural commentary. If that sounds good, welcome. And today we're going to be revisiting one of my favorite topics, the British royal family. And yet again, we're going to be talking about the Prince and Princess of America, the self-appointed Prince and Princess of America, Harry and Meghan. Yes, dear friends, they are in the news yet again. We need to break this down. Let's get started. And yes, when I say self-appointed Prince and Princess of America, I am joking. So before you write a comment that they are not a prince and princess of anything, I'm aware. Okay, I know that. So I don't think any of us thought at the beginning of January 2025 that the absolute dumpster fire that is all the Harry and Meghan news that has been coming out day after day, week after week, would be at the point where it is now. I've put out how many videos about it in the last month. We've talked about the way that she announced her brand new year 2025 on Instagram. It was supposed to be this, I'm coming out, this is my year to shine. She's done that for the last 3 years, so I don't know what differentiates 2025 from 2024, 2023, 2022, 2021, what have you. But okay, so she runs out on the beach on that video on Instagram, writes 2025 in the sand, and proclaims this is her year. The very next day, Netflix releases the trailer of her new show with Love Meghan, and the backlash was swift and it was fierce. The trailer was pretty much universally panned on every news outlet that covered it. The comments under the actual Netflix trailer video, the comments have been absolutely scathing. I don't even know what the latest like to dislike count is. I think the last thing I heard a couple days ago was that it was at a 91% thumbs down disapproval rating, which, to be completely honest with you, doesn't really make me happy. I'm definitely not a fan of Harry and Meghan and what they've done to the British royal family over the last, however, 7 years or so. But again, I don't like to see two human beings, especially her, get completely roasted the way that she has been. Although it's also balanced and fair to say that the criticism is overwhelmingly fair and it's due, because they have done, and she has done, a lot of really just unsavory things. So we have that Netflix trailer and all the backlash. Then about, I'd say, a week into the backlash, what I believe, in a strategic PR move, tried to counter the backlash by releasing a post on Instagram talking about the death of her beloved beagle Guy. And there was a lot of rumblings out there that the dog had passed away months ago, last fall, 2024. I did a video on the Netflix trailer. I did a video on her dog dying, so I'll definitely link those below or somewhere around here. So yeah, she released the dog post, which again, like the Netflix trailer, was met with almost immediate universal backlash, criticism. People were questioning the timing of it. They were left scratching their heads. If this dog indeed did pass away months prior, why was she pulling it out? There's been tons of conflicting stories in the media about how when the dog died, the dog had been injured, had broken both of its legs. It had been told in Meghan folklore that the dog broke its legs while it was still in Canada, and then other reports were saying that the dog broke its legs when it arrived in the UK. There's just all this crazy, it's just wherever Harry and Meghan have inserted themselves in any type of story, whether it's being written about them or they're putting it out themselves, there's always inconsistencies. There's always all this stuff where people are like, what is the real story here? Okay. I don't know. And obviously both stories, the Netflix story and the dog story, were not received the way that she wanted them to be received. So then we had the foray into local California politics and current events. Harry and Meghan, as I reported in my other video about it, show up to, I guess, survey the damage in California. They're led around burnt, charred up remains of people's homes, walking around the desecration with the mayor of Pasadena, drawing ire from the press, harsh criticism from so many people, and rightly so. They are not representatives of the British monarchy. They're not politicians. No one knew why they were there, what the heck was going on. So the backlash from showing up at the fire, they were called disaster tourists. It just was a huge dumpster fire of a mess. You had celebrities criticizing them in the press, most notably Justine Bateman, who called them disaster tourists. Everyone wanted to know, in what capacity were they there? It seemed like a photo op. It did not seem genuine. No one understood what the heck was going on. About a week later, Meghan's PR team counters in direct opposition to Justine Bateman's statement on X, basically saying that Justine was out of her depth, it was unfounded. They took offense to the fact that, she was saying that they're disaster tourists. Why are they there? So it was a complete, show. It was just not good. It seems like everything was getting worse and worse. It's been at a feverish peak pretty much since the beginning of January. So what we have now is just this tidal wave of relentless negative press concerning Harry and Meghan, and it doesn't seem to be slowing down anytime soon. Just in the month of January 2025, the amount of negative press that these two have received, I can't even imagine what it must be like to be at the receiving end of all of this backlash. But then again, I can't understand why they continue to just sing the same song, reinsert themselves in every situation in the complete and total wrong way, it's just an uncalled for capacity, and it doesn't seem to be slowing down. And now what has happened is Vanity Fair, who before this time had written about them in the past in somewhat more glowing terms, but now they're releasing an article that is basically talking about all of the things that have been happening since they arrived on American shores and how their brand has completely been fading since that time. They talk a little bit, like a tiny bit in a positive way about them and in a way, I guess, to appear fair and balanced, but the majority of the article is not favorable at all. So I'm gonna read a few excerpts from this article, and first of all, I'm going to tell you, it is a long article. It's over or at 8,000 words long is what people are saying. I read it and I just could not believe how long it was. I'm going to read what I feel are the best parts and we'll talk about it, but this article is not good. And I can only imagine what is going on in Montecito, California, between the two of them right now. Are they scampering around trying to figure out how to do damage control? What are their plans exactly? Are they going to remain silent about all these accusations and things that are being hurled at them? Are they going to try to, again, counter with a statement about why they don't agree with it and why it's just a smear campaign? Or do you think the unthinkable could happen and they could actually stop and get real with themselves and try to make amends going forward? I have an idea of what approach they're going to take, but I have thought about this and I'm going to present to you guys what I think they should do. How I really think that they could finally, especially Meghan, at this point in time, finally start to dig herself out of this hole that she has been plunging herself into for the last 5 years. Because if she continues on this path, nothing good will come of it. So let's get to the article and some of the major highlights. Okay guys, so I have my iPad here to the side and I've got the Vanity Fair article pulled up and it's titled Inside Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's Big Business Ambitions, 5 years after their royal exit. Ensconced in their cozy Montecito mansion, the Sussexes are living the American dream. By all accounts, the love is real. But their foray into moguldom has not always been a smooth ride. I'm going to skip the beginning because I find the beginning particularly infuriating because the writer seems really hell-bent on telling you all about their wonderful Montecito mansion, the property, how much it's worth. It's kind of just throwing wealth in the reader's face, which I don't know if in itself is a way that the author is trolling them, meaning Harry and Meghan, them, because a normal person reads this and they think, okay, like no one cares about how rich they are, especially coupled with all the infuriating things that they have done in the press just in the last month alone. So the highlights of the article are basically talking about how their approach to business in the last 5 years since Megxit, since they left the royal family, has been altogether scattered and unpredictable and just unfruitful in the sense that there hasn't really been any type of real success. They've made a lot of deals, high profile deals with companies like Spotify and Netflix, but yet haven't really produced any type of American sensation, or not the type of American sensation that they were hoping to make with their released material. So y'all know that they signed with Spotify back when they first got to America, and they had released something through their Archwell Audio, and it appeared to be a podcast that was supposed to be with Harry and Meghan, like a joint host podcast with them. No one knew what it was going to be. No one knew what it was going to be about. They released it and then things went radio silent for almost a year. And as we know, she ended up releasing her podcast called Archetypes. And this portion of the Vanity Fair article talks about their dealings with Spotify and the developmental process and what happened there. So let me read this to you. The development process was challenging, the former Spotify employee said. They had this idea to do a podcast because they knew celebrities did them, right? The former Spotify employee says Harry and Meghan didn't do what celebrities do on podcasts, which is turn on the mic and talk. They wanted a big theme that would explain the world, but they had no ideas. That's quote. Someone who worked closely with them on audio projects disputes this version, lamenting that because of Harry and Meghan's insistence on silence from employees and their own reticence, the public doesn't know about good projects that had to be abandoned for practical reasons. It feels like the only story is, quote, they didn't satisfy their contract, end quote, she says. It's not like work wasn't being done. But as time passed, it would be nearly 2 years between the couple's deal being signed and the premiere of Archetypes. Spotify began applying pressure to produce anything that people might listen to. So they talk about different production ideas that Harry and Meghan had. Harry apparently wanted to host a series where he interviewed powerful men with complicated stories like Mark Zuckerberg, Putin, and Donald Trump. The concept wasn't just that the men shared challenging early lives, it was that their experiences made them into sociopaths, or so Harry envisioned. One person familiar with this ideation process said. So that seemed like I don't really think that any of those three men would take the time to sit down with Harry, but that's just my personal opinion. And then they go on to talk about where it seems like to be a challenging process between the Spotify employees and Harry and Meghan to even get ideas going and to get the production process rolling along. For example, a former Spotify employee says Harry came to the Los Angeles office once and asked for a cup of cocoa. There was none in the office, so employees scrambled to obtain some. And an idea was pitched to Harry. What if he reviewed a hot chocolate every week while chatting with a different friend, which he and his team considered and rejected? Another concept was that Harry would fix something every week, ranging from a flat tire to global warming. He wanted to do a podcast about disabled people who compete in the Invictus Games, but there's no crossover between the audience who would listen to that and the people who wanted to hear about Harry's life. The former Spotify employee says it was challenging to engage Harry, and a person who interviewed for a job with the couple says, I just felt like he kind of didn't want to be there doing this at that time. My expectation was charming receiving line, and it was clear he wasn't that person, at least that day. So I'm getting the vibe that Harry still believes that he's a full-time working member of the royal family. Just meeting with the people and just, his presence is going to be inspiring enough that the ideas are just going to flow. He doesn't have to produce any, mind you, but the ideas are just going to flow and he's going to either accept or reject them. But you're in America now, boss. People expect you to sing for your supper. You're not inside Buckingham Palace anymore. You are in the real world, expected to earn your keep. So I just found this to be particularly funny. And then this is the most famous part that we all know about, when one of the heads of Spotify, Bill Simmons, when he described his own experience working with the Sussexes at Spotify, and he was talking about how he would do a show with them if he could, called The Effing Grifters. That's the podcast we should have launched with them, he said. Simmons also goes on to say, quote, I have got to get drunk one night and tell the story of the Zoom I had with Harry to try and help him with a podcast idea. It's one of my best stories. F them, the grifters. Okay? This is not good, you guys. This is not good. And this next part I'm going to read to you guys, I think really exemplifies how, and I've talked about this before in some of my other Harry and Meghan videos, one of the main criticisms that people have about them is that they are not real, they are not authentic, that they're constantly trying to posture and portray a really type of like look up to me image. I should be someone that you're looking up to. I have a lot to say and I'm important type of image. But yet at the same time, they want to be relatable. It's just weird. It's like they can't just drop the masks and be real and relatable. And it's this own type of self-censorship, this self-inflicted self-censorship that they do that is palpable to the public. The public picks up on that they are not authentic and they are not real. That's why it's hard for the public to buy anything that they're trying to sell. So this part of the article talks about that. And it says, Harry and Meghan became increasingly nervous about how their content would impact them. Marie says, I can say that they had really great ideas for shows, interesting pitches, interesting guests, but them as the deliverers, or either of them as the host of these more kind of edgy ideas, would have been like, they would have had to move again. I think it's a combination of self-censorship for good reason, and the corporate powers that had run podcasting that don't know what that is to create valuable shows. Those things make it really hard to make good stuff. He has a million things that he has to protect, and he has the book and they have the documentary, and they don't want to make the Queen upset and their public image. So it's like they're chasing all of these things to try to make money and be relatable, but yet they are hiding behind a glass wall saying that we're real and we're relatable, but only on our terms. And if you try to criticize us in any way, we will deflect, we will call you out. It's just a really weird dynamic. The next part of the article that I found really, really interesting was if you actually listen to the Archetype podcast that came out 2 years ago, it seemed very watered down and weird. It really seemed like with every topic, Meghan had to bring it back to herself, but the conversation didn't really seem real or authentic, like an exchange of ideas between two people, because it was always the guest talking, but then Meghan interjecting and giving her analysis of what she thought the person was trying to say and her take on everything, as if to say, you've heard the conversation, but now I'm going to tell you what the conversation is about. So in this part, they're even talking about how even the idea for the Archetype podcast came from another employee, not Meghan, and that this employee, unfortunately, didn't own any of the intellectual property, which is sad if that's really the case. So this podcast of hers, Archetypes, began production in January 2021. And listen to this from a Spotify source. It says, quote, Archetypes was complicated as a podcast concept. You had to explain what the archetype was, then why the woman embodied it, but also how it wasn't true about her. In every episode, it was like, this is my friend who has been called that archetype, but that is not that archetype. These archetypes, actually stereotypes, if she knew how, what word to use, included diva Mariah Carey and bimbos like Paris Hilton. As for those friends, there was an expectation that Meghan would be able to use her personal Rolodex to book the show, the way hosts like Simmons and the Pod Save America guys do. The person who worked in media projects says the assumption was Meghan's going to be on the phone with the Pope tomorrow. The former... Sorry. The former Spotify employee says, in addition to Taylor Swift, they heard rumors that Beyonce and Megan Thee Stallion was asked to come on the show and declined. Other people who worked on the podcast also say they heard those names mentioned, though a source close to the situation says Megan Thee Stallion's team knew nothing about the request. So let's go a little further in. And when I was talking to you guys earlier about how everything was kind of just watered down. So for example, in one episode, she meaning Meghan, she wanted to actually say the word B-I-C-H because as the source remembers Meghan saying, you hear it all the time. It ended up with Meghan calling it the B word, an episode titled S-L-U-T, and I'm spelling it because I don't want anything messed up with YouTube, so that's why I'm doing it. An episode was retitled to Human Being by Meghan and had to be completely reimagined late in production. Every episode got more and more watered down and further away from actual conversation. It felt very like Women's Studies and Gender Studies 101 taught in 2003. And that was my criticism when I was listening to those episodes at the time. I really felt like all the cultural references and all the things she was talking about seemed very dated. I mean, she was using references to old Two Live Crew song from the early 90s or from the first Austin Powers movies to talk about gender stereotypes about women. And I'm thinking to myself, this is probably something that was spouted to her from a professor at Northwestern back in the early 2000s. This isn't anything that you hear about now. I don't think that the majority of women, Fortune 500 CEO, powerful millionaire, billionaire women around the world who are by all means killing it in business and in life are sitting around talking about how the lyrics to a Two Live Crew song makes them feel like they're being held back. It was just total and complete nonsense, you guys. And this in particular, to have these Spotify sources say that they felt the same, and it was like these platitudes and these ideas that she was throwing out, but they weren't really thought through. To have that be point out is particularly scathing, in my opinion. So the next part of the article starts to explore all of the bullying claims against Meghan herself. Very early March of 2021, the press in Britain was reporting that Buckingham Palace was going to be investigating claims about incidences of bullying between Meghan and her staff. And they basically said that they were taking it very seriously, that they were going to look into the claims. Of course, Meghan claps back on the claims, calling it a smear campaign, saying, that she herself had been a victim of bullying and it was particularly troubling for her to have those same types of allegations thrown at her. Unfortunately for the public, the findings of those investigations were never made public. Personally, I can understand why the palace probably did not want to release the findings of those claims. I'm sure it was embarrassing for them to even admit that they were investigating it in the first place. It makes them look as if there was things going on during their watch that they just allowed happen, which I believe that they did. I do believe that Harry and Meghan were coddled while they were still in the British royal family. And I do believe that they, of course, tried to protect Meghan to some extent, particularly Harry, who, by all accounts, seems like he's the type of person who is very comfortable saying what Meghan wants, Meghan gets. So when you're dealing with those types of personalities, of course, I'm sure things were covered up or glossed over or tried to be pushed under the rug for a long time. So by the time that it finally got to that point where they felt like they had to make a statement about these allegations, there were several palace aides and employees that worked for them that were probably fed up. I feel bad that they are not allowed to speak under British law, or because of the fact that they work for the family, because that's not really fair to them. But maybe they don't want to talk. Maybe they just don't want to get involved or have their names dragged through the mud. But in this part of the article, Vanity Fair is expanding on that idea, and they're talking about that not only now do we have reports and rumblings in the UK that she is bullying palace staff, but now, since they have been stateside for the past 5 years and dumped at the very least 19 employees that have been with them, that there are now rumblings about bullying here in America by Meghan to her staff. The article says the person who worked in media projects read stories in the tabloids about Meghan bullying palace aides and couldn't imagine such behavior actually happened. After working with her, though, the person realized, oh, any given Tuesday this happened. While it beggars belief that Meghan actually shouted at a palace aide, as it has been reported, I don't know why it would beggar belief, but anyway, a person who interacted with her professionally says, you can be yelled at even if somebody doesn't raise their voice. It's funny that people don't differentiate between the energy of being yelled at and literally someone screaming at you. The article continues talking about Spare and Harry's seemingly lack of understanding about how writing a tell-all book about his family, or for example releasing private text messages between the Princess of Wales and his wife, or discussing private conversations with him and his brother William, he seems incapable of understanding how that could create bad blood or a rift between his family, which by all accounts doesn't really speak of a lot of personal accountability. The article also talks about how her American Riviera Orchard company has really been not able to get off the ground. In March 2024, she created a whole Instagram account for it with a crest for the company, but no website to direct people to. They were capturing emails, but there was no real website. As of now, there's nothing available for sale. She's been met with trademark problems, applications being denied. These two are very scattered in all of their endeavors, and they seem to be grasping at whatever shit they can get to that might get them a little bit of notoriety or positive press, but it doesn't really ever play well. So those were the biggest parts of the Vanity Fair article that I thought were interesting. You can definitely go ahead and read that article online if you want to read it in full. I would say get yourself a hot beverage or a glass of wine, something, because you're gonna need it to get through that article. That thing was ginormously long. Is that even a term, ginormously long? Yeah, it was, the article beggars belief, okay? You have all of these things, and now it comes to the final question: what are they going to do? And I talked earlier about what are they going to do to help repair their reputations. But in my opinion, I don't understand why that is the main objective. Is the most important thing repairing reputations, or is the most important thing redemption and healing yourself from this life that seems to be so destructive? You have claims, you have accusations, you have criticisms, you have allegations about bullying, saying she is a bully. People are saying that about her now on 2 different continents. Can 2 continents be completely smearing her? This unfounded campaign against her? Or is there truth to these claims? They're very fond of hurling accusations at others without any proof. 17 verifiable untruths in the Oprah interview alone, but that's okay. And now these criticisms about being disaster tourists, showing up, why? For publicity for yourself? Walking over charred remains of people's homes, possibly bodies, just to get your FaceTime on camera. So this now leads me to ask the question, how long is this going to continue to go on? And are they savable? In particular, her. Is she savable? Is she going to continue down this path, or is she going to pause, and is she going to atone, and is she going to course correct? Now, you guys know me. I'm going to put a Christian worldview on the situation. I know a lot of you feel that she is not savable. Personally, I don't know what she's going to do. I don't think that she's going to probably do what she should do, but I can hope and I can say that yes, she is savable. We don't like to think about it because she angers so many people, but she still is a child of God. So yes, she is savable. I do believe that God puts people like this on a world stage to prove as a cautionary tale, to show us what not to do. And I got a really beautiful comment from a viewer that I want to share with you guys. The comment reads, "Sometimes God in his mercy does allow people to be exposed. The exposure and maybe even crimes are exposed, and prison or consequences of rebellion and sin cause loss of status, etc. will open their hardened hearts to their need of a savior. I never tell God what to do in prayer. I ask him for his will to be in their lives and bring glory to himself. Our lives here on earth are for his glory." I thought that was so unbelievably beautiful because it is true. I do feel like this is playing out on the world stage for a reason. It's to show us that this is what happens when you tell lies, when you tell half-truths, when you do everything possible in your life for personal gain at the expense of others, even immediate family members. What can happen? How your life can be lie after lie after lie and just fall apart like a house of cards. And this is what's happening to Harry and Meghan, particularly Meghan, especially when you do not find it in yourself to admit any wrongdoing, to come to the table of negotiations with friends, with family, with people that you've wronged and say, yes, there have been disagreements, there have been fights and infighting, but this is my part, this is what I am holding myself accountable for, I'm sorry, and then allow the other party to do the same. But Harry and Meghan haven't allowed that. If anything, they've doubled down on all of the accusations, all the criticism, and all the claims against them. They doubled down on everything without taking any kind of accountability for anything, even when they put out a story and it's completely proven false, or it's proven that, look, they're only presenting half of what happened and here is the proof. And even when faced in those types of situations, they refuse to back down. And that, I feel, is going to be their downfall, especially for her if she doesn't course correct. So she could do one of three things. She could stay silent, which is what I think she's going to do. She can continue to clap back and call any and all criticism of her just a smear campaign. Or she can do what I really think she should, which is apologize, atone, and just try to move on and repair her life. And I'm not even talking about repairing her reputation, because in my opinion, repairing her reputation should be the absolute least of her worries. Trying to be successful in business right now and in all her business ventures and dealings should be the last thing on this woman's mind. Stop trying to rebuild your reputation. Stop trying to angle for public support and for public sympathy. Stop trying to succeed in business. That is not the most important thing at stake here. Right now, what's important is her very soul. That's what's important to all of us, is the state of our souls. How are we living our lives in relation to the way that Christ wants us to live? What are we doing to better ourselves and to better the relationships with everyone in our lives? I really feel like these two need to focus on themselves. First of all, they need to completely stop courting the media, and they need to just cease with all of these business ventures. That is not what's important. They need to try to repair whatever is going on in their own relationship, and they need to focus on these so-called children that they have. I'm not going to go into all of that. People say that they have kids. People say that they don't have kids. Let's just say that they have kids, okay? If they have kids, they need to focus on these children. They don't need to be taking trips to Nigeria or wherever the heck they were this last summer. Was it Colombia or something? I don't even know. They need to stop traveling so much. They need to stop showing up at all of these events. They go to the opening of an envelope, okay? That all needs to stop. Stay home, focus on repairing and rebuilding your own relationship, because I gotta tell you, I can speak with almost 100% certainty that whatever is going on behind the scenes is probably not good. Two people cannot coexist in a relationship and be completely wonderful and healthy and everything hunky-dory with the amount of criticism and backlash that is constantly being thrown at this couple. And yes, it is warranted, but what I'm saying is, even if it's deserved, there's no way that they're thriving behind the scenes. They need to be focusing on each other and repairing whatever's going on there. They need to be focusing on these children and just stop courting the media. Stop with all the "we want to succeed in business" nonsense. Personally, if I was her, I would go to Netflix and I would try to work out something quietly behind the scenes and just tell Netflix, look, I know what's going to happen if I release this show, whether it's released now or whether it's released in 2 months or even 2 years. It's not going to be received well. Let's just scrap the whole thing. If you want to pay me half, fine, whatever. I'm sure Netflix would probably take her up on it. We all know Netflix probably wants to get out of that contract, but yet they also want to try to recoup some of their loss. But I think it's a lose-lose for both, because if she really tries to push Netflix to go forward with this, it's not going to work because no one's going to want to watch this show. It's just going to get even worse for her. They just need to cut their losses. They need to really learn from this. They need to really learn that when you sign a deal with two people on the premise that you're going to get dirt on the royal family, and that's personally what I believe. That's the whole reason why Netflix signed them in the first place. And that's why I believe that they are ultimately failing in their dealings with Harry and Meghan, because when you sign with two people to get dirt on the royal family, that was their only successful project with Netflix thus far. His Polo documentary failed. This With Love Meghan lifestyle show seems like it's going to fail. She had another animated series called Pearl, which never got off the ground. The only thing that they have done successfully with Netflix is create a 6-hour show where they talk trash about their family the entire time. So I think that they both need to cut their losses. I'm sorry, but it was just not a good way to enter into business with somebody and weren't able to produce, plain and simple. I do think that, say for example, if Netflix said, look, let's scrap this, the backlash is too much for us, it's too much for you, we'll pay half of what we're supposed to pay, would she sue them? Part of me was thinking, okay, maybe she would sue them, but then I'm thinking if she sued them, she'd really be cooked because she would really, really get roasted in the press. So I don't know, but point being, that whole relationship just needs to be dissolved and both need to go their own way, because nothing good is coming out of this association with Netflix for Netflix or Harry and Meghan. Supposedly the reason why they left the family in the first place is because they wanted to raise their family in peace and quiet outside of the scrutiny of the British media. But ever since they've gotten to America, all they seem to have done is try to court the media over here, which is actually a lot worse than the British media as it relates to royals. The British media, they have agreements with the British royal family, what's going to be reported and covered and what's not going to be reported and covered. And both work symbiotically and they recognize the boundaries that each have set with each other. When they moved here, that's why everyone was calling it such a hypocritical move. When you move to California, that's the hotbed of paparazzi and glamour and lifestyle and look at me. And why would you move to California? Well, we all know why. So they need to stop courting the press. They need to stop courting the media. Go away privately, live your life. Also, you have to make amends behind the scenes with both of their families. He needs to go and make amends with his family, and she needs to do the same. But it's important to recognize and realize that they're going to have to do it without expectation and without leaking to the press that they've done this, because that's really going to shoot them in the foot if they do that. When you go and you apologize to someone, whether you're 100% wrong, 50% wrong, 10% wrong, whatever it is, forgiveness is not about what you gain. Forgiveness is about going to the other person. It's justice, giving to that party, that person, what is rightfully theirs. And if you've wronged somebody, it's part of God's plan for justice that you go and you make amends, you apologize, you take accountability, and you have to do it in private and you have to do it away from the media. It's important that he does that with his family, and it's important that she does that with her family. And also, she needs to make amends with his family as well. She basically called them the R word. She basically said that they had it out for her from day one, which was absolutely not true. When you marry into a family, you do nothing but criticize it for over 5 years, but yet you want to reap all the benefits of being associated with that family. And then she needs to go apologize to her family. Now, do I agree with everything her family has done, all the interviews that they've given, all the trash talk that they have engaged in regarding her? No, I don't agree with it, but I also understand the hurt that is behind that. And I do understand that, for example, Samantha Markle, Meghan's half-sister, has talked about how she felt almost alone and like this voice crying out in the wilderness because she was acting against a massive PR machine that Harry and Meghan had access to. They could dump tons of money into a PR machine to portray them in the best possible light while portraying her family as just these horrible degenerates that were jealous of her. It's just a mess. So there's so many human aspects of their story that needs to be taken care of behind the scenes and away from the press and public. And then once they've made amends with their family, once they've stopped focusing on trying to repair their reputations and wanting to focus on making all these millions, they just need to disappear, and they need to pause, and they need to take a breath, and they need to realize that all of these bids for attention that they engage in, it's not what's important. What's important is living out your life in the best way, being a good person and being good to others. Are they going to disappear? Are they going to try to make amends? I personally doubt it. But do I pray that God will stop them in their tracks from this destructive behavior? Yeah, I do. I think that he is allowing the public to get more and more angry about these two, to hold a mirror up to themselves so they can see what they're doing. Whether they choose to look in that mirror, it's up to them. I know what this seems like. It's the car crash that you cannot look away from. And I see this as just a huge soap opera. This really does seem like a real life soap opera. Every single time you turn around, they're doing something else to draw negative attention to themselves. It beggars belief, right? And I know so many of us are so angry at them for the way that they disrespected their families, and now the way that they've shown up acting like royalty in America who's going to solve all of these horrible problems like California wildfires and such, and you're just thinking, enough already, just enough. And a lot of us are just spewing things that are just probably not the most constructive. I understand why people are angry and I understand why we're doing it, but I just want to call us to just kind of rein ourselves in a little bit and recognize that for whatever reason, their capacity, their mental capacity, their soul capacity, their heart capacity is not allowing them to recognize everything that they're doing. It's not, something is missing. Something is missing inside of them. If there isn't an opportunity for self-reflection, there isn't an opportunity to be better. There isn't an opportunity to course correct. They'll never ask for, seek, and get forgiveness. So there's something missing. So we have to pray for that something missing, for that puzzle piece that is a hole inside of Harry and Meghan, and particularly Meghan. We have to pray that that piece that's missing will be filled with the piece from Christ, and that somehow, some way, they will see what they're doing, they will stop what they're doing, and they will make amends, and hopefully all of this can get better. Because if you disappear, if you do what's right, and if you stop all this, it is going to get better. The British public and the American public in particular are a pretty forgiving lot. They just have to go away, make amends, and give us a chance to forgive, and give us a chance to back off and cool off from all of this. I don't know what they're going to do. What do you guys think that they're going to do? Are they going to remain silent? Are they going to clap back? Or do you think, holy of all holies, that they're maybe going to have a change of heart and ask for forgiveness from both their families and the public, because I really do think that they owe the public an apology. I really do feel gaslit in the craziest sense of the word for the last 5 years. Heck, even 7 years this has been going on, right? That's all I have for you guys for today. I've got some makeup related royal content coming out that I'm excited to share with you guys. I have a video coming out about Catherine, the Princess of Wales, being in remission from her cancer. A true cause for celebration, so keep a lookout for that. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. It means a lot, especially as a small creator here on YouTube. God bless you all watching, and I will talk to you very soon. Bye.